Minister, can I welcome the fact that you published the new dog breeding guidelines as promised, and I have to say there is a lot of very positive inclusions regarding the conditions dogs are kept in, the environment, health and welfare, record keeping and so on. But the problem really is that there's still guidelines, and it's up to individual breeders to take them on, with a lack of sufficient enforcement by the local authorities. I have to say, given the public outcry over the Panorama programme into Misty Meadow Puppy Farm in Cavan, and the fact that the Council took no action in spite of the evidence, how can you reassure us that the guidelines are going to make a difference?
I propose to take parliamentary questions 38566 and 38567 together. I'd like to thank the Deputy.
89.
Thank
you, Minister.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Deputy for continued interest in this very important area. As I said, my department published the new guidelines for dog breeding establishments in July. These will come into effect on the 1st of January 2019. I want, and I think we all want, to see the highest standards achieved by dog breeding establishments, and these guidelines will help to do this. They form part of the framework within which local authorities carry out inspections and issue improvement notices where required. My department developed these guidelines through consultation and with both industry experts and the public, and include the ISPCA and the DSPCA and veterinary sector as well. Some of the issues raised related to matters beyond the scope of the guidelines, and they are now being considered as part of a wider review of the legislation. It is important to bear in mind that the enforcement of animal welfare standards for all animals, including dogs, is a matter for the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine under the Animal Health and Welfare Acts. Both departments work closely with each other to ensure a coordinated approach is taken in this area. In this context, I understand that last May, the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine launched a public consultation on the voluntary code of practice for pet shops and on the need for further legislation in relation to the advertising and sale of animals and pets. So there's a lot of coordination and consultation between my department and the veterinary section of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and of course the local authorities, which fall in a third department, which was something that was raised in the consultation, that people felt there was too many departments dealing with this issue, and I tend to agree. We had discussions with agriculture regarding that, which didn't come to any conclusion in terms of changing the system. The local authorities obviously are responsible in relation to the enforcement and in relation to the registration regime. Animal welfare is with agriculture, and ourselves are responsible for dog control and for legislation. So I think there has been a substantial shift in the guidelines, and this has come on board from experts in relation to socialisation of pups, in relation to ensure that before pups are being sold, that they have the company of people. There's been change in the staffing level. There has been a move towards an increase in socialisation to ensure that there is more time being spent with human contact with the pups to help aid their progression when they are being purchased by a family or children or individuals, and I think that is important. But as I said, we are looking at the primary legislation, and we're also looking at the restricted dog breeds, restricted list of dog breeds. We're initiating a public consultation on that, because there has been suggested changes made in relation to that by people involved, and there has been a number of incidents that have taken place by dogs that weren't on the restricted breeds, and whether there should be a change in policy in relation to either having a list or having a list of dangerous dogs as opposed to dangerous breeds. So this consultation will be initiated by the Department during the year.
Here is whether the guidelines are going to improve the conditions in breeding establishments, and whether they're going to have any impact on the sale of puppies. And I suppose we have two concerns really. I mean, the first one is around the issue of inspection of premises and the ability or lack of ability of the local authorities to do that properly, given that in some instances we're talking about criminal activity. The guidelines talk about 24-hour notice, so you're given a heads up, and even though subsequent visits are unannounced, what resources do they really have to do the unannounced visits? I don't think they have enough. I think the sale, particularly internet sales, is hugely problematic. I mean, if you look at Even this morning, there were 126 dogs for sale on the internet this morning. Illegal sales are continuing at an alarming rate. Over the summer, there were a number of tragic cases. In May, 27 puppies in a van in Scotland that originated in Ireland. In July, 16 puppies found in a horse trailer in Galway. They all died afterwards. August, over 100 dogs rescued by the ISPCA. In September this month, we had a man being fined over €1,000 in a district court with 37 dogs seized from his farm. But all he got was a penalty to say he couldn't have dogs for 18 months. I mean, he shouldn't be allowed to ever have them again after that. So I suppose the point is, even though convictions are up, there's a huge amount of profit being made here, and the activities show no sign of receding. And in that sense, I think we need to constantly monitor it and do more.
And improved monitoring, and obviously, as I said, the local authorities are responsible for that. I know the Department of Agriculture is considering further legislation, whether there is a need for further legislation regarding the advertisement and sale of pet animals, which would include pups on that. You've highlighted some of the atrocious cases that made the headlines over the last period of time, including the case in Galway. And I'd like to commend volunteer groups like Madra, which did great work in trying to save as many of those pups as possible. But we must, I suppose, recognise the difference between the illegal activity and the legal activity. We want to stamp out illegal activity, and those that are operating underground, hidden dog breeding establishments on a small scale. We have to look at whether we're going to change the definition of a dog breeding establishment, whether that's going to be reduced, and that would have to be done in primary legislation, again, which was one of the suggestions that came through in the consultation. But we need to improve the standards in the legalised, registered dog breeding establishments while stamping out those that are carrying out illegal activities.
So I think you have correctly identified one of the key problems, which is the division of responsibility for this key area across 3 government departments, and we absolutely have to get to grips with that if we're going to deal with it properly. I mean, you know, dogs aren't livestock, they're not bred for slaughter or food production. We need to give this the attention it deserves, and the problem is as well is that the local authorities, while they're responsible, haven't taken their responsibility seriously or haven't been resourced adequately to do that. And I think the inaction of Cavan County Council in not decisively dealing with the Ray Cullivan puppy farm has really sent out an absolutely dreadful signal to those involved in precisely the illegal activity that you've highlighted. So I think we really do need to pay this attention, and I'm wondering, Minister, if you would agree to meet some of the groups who are at the coalface of this area, who can come up with some of the animal protection individuals who would really like to meet you. I think maybe Deputy Moran O'Sullivan has already asked that, but would you be willing to meet a group of these very responsible volunteers, I suppose, who stepped into the breach? I think they'd really welcome a hearing with you if you were able to afford them that.
I'd be delighted to meet groups that are interested in animal welfare. I think it's a hugely important area. I accept it is not ideal that it is across 3 government departments. You know, as I said, there were discussions on foot of the public consultation with agriculture, and there is a lot of coordination and collaboration, if you like, across government departments. We have, as I mentioned here before, a small rescue dog ourselves at home, Kira, again from the Dog Rescue Centre in Galway, Madra. They do great work, and they're inundated, and the amount of volunteers and the fundraising and the initiatives that take place to raise money for them is hugely impressive. And the fact that, you know, local authorities or the Department of Agriculture also, towards the end of the year, provide funding for animal rescue and for a number of organisations, not just for dogs, for cats and for other animals. But I'd certainly be happy to meet with groups that are interested.
Move on to